since I'm not a musician, hearing myself through headphones through a microphone is not something that I'm used to at all.
It's a little jarring.
It's extremely jarring.
I used to never do this in person, so it was always on Zoom, so I had to use headphones.
So
and then
you started during the pandemic?
Yeah, exactly. If that wasn't a giveaway that I was doing it on Zoom. But I did that for like 2.5 years, and then started doing them in person, and then I could actually take the headphones off.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is normal. We're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
So I kind of like doing it like that.
For any of your acting gigs, have you had to do ADR stuff? Like going to a studio and replace?
Yes.
That seems like it'd be so jarring. That just like staring at yourself talking and kind of trying to say it the same way.
Yeah, it was weird because I had to do one. The one time I really had to do ADR was for a movie called Greyhound, which was like a World War II movie. And it was like a 1.5 years after we had actually filmed it. We go in, huge studio space. It looks like a black box kind of, but with a bunch of paneling. And, there's like all this chaos going on, and you have to like perfectly match what the line you're going to say when this line crosses the screen and it gets from left to right.
Oh, they have a little visual indicator for the timing of it?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
So it was kind of interesting. And hearing you guys talk about that on the podcast you did with the Master Your Mix podcast, he hit the nail on the head with like, oh, you have to be far away from the microphone if the character is far away from the camera or something like that. So
yeah.
It was kind of interesting to do that.
Sound for film is, I think I said it in that podcast too, but it's always really, really intrigued me a lot. I mean, it's like, there's an art to it. There's an art and a science to what you do in the studio, but in the film world, it seems so much more science on top. I mean, it's still an art, but like things you're talking about, you have to make it feel like it's in this as real as possible in this imaginary world that someone's created, and really place it in that place. Like you're talking about, like distance matters, or using weird reverb ambiances that sound exactly like the room that someone might be standing in. And I just can't believe what a crazy, but then I've seen like, yeah, you were in a studio doing that, but then I've also seen people that have just like, they're like ADR engineers with a kit with a briefcase, and they'll just come to actors' homes who don't want to have to go deal with that.
Whoa.
And then sort of like set up a mini booth so they're not as inconvenienced.
Yeah.
And they're just like grabbing the ADR, and then they're gone, and they're just doing it in like somebody's mansion or whatever, so
Sounds
that they
like
don't have to travel to the studio.
That's crazy. That'd be a weird job, going like just, your whole studio in your briefcase.
Well, like a friend of my friends, so a very strong connection. I think his full-time gig is being the ADR engineer for like Tom Hardy or something like that. So literally
just one guy. Whoa.
So literally Tom gets the people to budget into the film, this guy, so that exactly what we're talking about, he will just show up when it's convenient for him between projects and shooting other things, so that he has the convenience of doing it. He can get it done a deadline for the movie, but he can do it on his time. So he just sort of has this guy on retainer who will like go around to where he is, and he can be doing ADR for other projects while he's filming another project. Yeah. I don't know how you would keep up with that.
That's pretty great for the ADR guy. I mean, constant work.
That sounds amazing. I think about that kind of stuff all the time. Also with directors who've got 7 films going on at one time. I don't understand how Tim Burton can do a live action film and a stop motion film. And I just don't. I have a hard time concentrating on one thing.
Right. To schedule all that is got to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
What I was listening to that Master Your Mix podcast that you did, and you mentioned that you were interested in doing film stuff maybe at some point. What about it like interests you? Is there a certain field in it that you would like to get into?
I don't know. It's all just so intriguing, and I don't know if it's a grass is greener situation or something, just because the idea, I love movies a lot, and the idea of being part of creating this imaginary world that someone's occupying for a couple hours. I mean, I kind of think about making records the same way also, of it's less putting someone in a physical space, although part of it can be that too sometimes, and it's more of putting somebody in like a feeling or a moment. And so I think about songs and records and the way they sound when I'm working on them in a similar way, like thinking about the sense of space and the way things are coming across and the depth of field of them. And I think part of that is because of my love of movies since I was a kid. But I think if I was going to get into it, I don't know, ADR seems a little tedious to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have the creative... I mean, Foley seems incredible.
Yeah, watching
seems
videos
so
of
fun.
people do Foley is wild.
I don't know if I quite have the patience for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me more would be mixing films. That's what would really be interesting to me. Mixing in the sound effects with the music and getting all that just right on a big scoring stage. It seems really cool.
And then to do that, yeah, exactly like you said, on a scoring stage, like to have to think about it in the case of a movie theater as opposed to the way you might think about it either like in a studio or through headphones or a car mix, like you're not doing a car mix of a film.
It's a completely different thing. There's a funny story. I think was Bob Clearmountain did the mix of a Rolling Stones DVD. So that would probably be like 20 years ago when DVDs were more of a thing. A big live concert, though, that they spent a lot of time and money recording, and there was going to be this big deal because this concert film and surround sound and all this stuff. And I think he told a story in a magazine one time that I read where he mixed it in his studio and got it like awesome and everyone was happy with it. And then they took it to the scoring stage and it just sounded terrible in a movie theater. So then he realized he needed to mix it in a movie theater for it to make sense.
Right.
That could be the album soundtrack release mix, but he had to just completely do it in a completely different way. Because I mean, think about it, that's a giant room, and you don't know. I mean, just like when you're mixing in a studio, you have to get something ready to survive in anyone's listening environment.
Sure.
It could be AirPods, it could be their Bluetooth speaker that's in mono. And theaters are the same way. I mean, I don't know if you've been to a lot of movies, but depending on how much time and effort the theater puts into calibrating the room you're in, you can see the same movie in two different places and it looks and sounds completely different if they don't have the screen adjusted right or if they don't have their surround sound system calibrated correctly. It's like a completely different experience. So I think he realized it was a similar thing. He had to get it sounding great in this ideal version of this listening situation. That would be the only way it could translate to the less ideal versions of that listening situation.
And it's funny that can be subjective to whoever is, heading that project. I saw this tweet the other day of like what David Lynch, he wrote very specific instructions for the projectionist at all these studio or all these movie theaters that when they showed Blue Velvet, that, or maybe it was Mulholland Drive, either one, that the projection would be like slightly lower so that it had more headroom, because like for whatever reason that made sense to him. And it's like all those little things I don't think about, like you just said, can make a movie feel completely different from this place to the next place.
Well, and then think about if you're talking about like Atmos or surround sound in a theater setting, where you sit is going to be a completely different experience. If I'm crammed up into the top left, what speaker am I near? What's going on over here in this corner? So you have to think about all that too. I think there was a time at the beginning of surround sound happening in film where people were getting a lot more crazy with mixes, and now it seems like in general that's tamed a lot because it's too jarring for somebody unless they're in the ideal position. And so now it's more like people are using them for ambient things, which can still be very enveloping and cool, but and then, of course, every war film, you always have the plane flying overhead that everyone can feel.
Yeah. When you're mixing your own projects, do you have a specific thing you need it to sound good on, like the studio monitors, the car mix, the AirPods? Do you check everything, or do you only focus on one thing?
As I've gotten older and more experienced, I've been mixing in the same room I've been at Chase Park for over 20 years now. And I've been professionally doing this for, I guess, if you're counting post-college being professionally doing this, then I've been doing it for 16 years. And I've been working not entirely out of the same two rooms, but almost entirely. I would say 80% of my time or something like that has been in these two rooms. And then on top of that, specifically mixing, I'd say 90% of my time has been in Studio B of Chase Park. So I would say when I was younger, I checked it way more. I did the car check. I did the headphone check. I listened in 2 different sets of monitors. I would listen on like a crappy Bluetooth speaker. But as time's gone on, that's really shrunk.
Yeah.
Because I just know what it's supposed to sound like in there. And I don't trust, like, the car check is cool to just check that the vibe and it translates and it feels good in the car. But I think a lot of there's a trap there, which is, and a lot of artists, when they go check in the car, this happens too. There's some specific detail that they feel like isn't translating across in the car. And especially before something's mastered, unless it's like egregiously off, I don't know how relevant that is. Every car is so different.
Yeah.
Every speaker's so different. People's EQ settings on their cars. I mean, I've had every wacky thing happen where somebody checks in the car and they're like, oh my God, the bass, it's just, and then you go in their car and what's going on in the EQ? Well, the bass is jacked. So this is like, there's just tons of variables you have to think about. Now, I'm not saying it's not useful, like I said, to understand here's a vibe happening and this is feeling good in here, but it's not great to be like, okay, well, does that one acoustic guitar come across? And it's like you're sitting in the driver's seat and that acoustic guitar is panned to the right. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the detail checking like that is irrelevant in the car to me. But so I've just gotten out of the habit of it, frankly.
So you're sticking with the studio
mostly the monitors. I do check in headphones.
Okay.
And now more recently, I didn't really do it with the earbuds, but now with AirPods becoming just so prominent.
Yeah.
I do check
Everyone's
them
got them
occasionally. I again feel like it's a little bit of a trap sometimes. I don't know. For me, checking in alternate places is really just making sure that it's generally coming across rather than searching for the details of a mix in this other format. It's
totally
like, okay, the lead vocal might feel a little quieter than it did in my studio monitors, but does the song still feel great? Mm-hmm. Then it's fine because it's gonna sound a little different everywhere anyway. Again, especially before it's mastered,
right?
Which is kind of giving it that last layer of sort of sheen and limiting that's gonna help it translate.
Yeah, I mean, you can go crazy checking every possible way of listening to it.
Exactly, but all that really matters in those other places is, does the song still have the same emotional impact on you? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if the shaker feels a little quieter.
Right, yeah.
And there's no point in getting hung up on that, in my opinion. I probably honestly should do a better job of checking in AirPods and stuff.
Only because, like you said, everyone seems to have them now. And there's so much more of a thing. So it's like, and I feel like those are less customizable, quote unquote, in terms of like an EQ or everything.
That's true.
Most people have them the exact same setting with the noise cancellation on,
right,
or
you
off.
Could
maybe.
go in and dive in and mess with your settings, but it's not, Apple doesn't put that stuff up front,
right?
So most people don't touch it.
Yeah, and I don't quite understand the Atmos quality on like Tidal or something like that. Do you know quite what that is? Like, why is that different?
So I've done some mixing in Atmos, and Atmos is like the child of surround sound of 5.1, then 7.1, then 9.1. But it works a little differently in that it can translate binaurally to headphones. It's basically a system that, and I'm probably going to butcher some of these technical details, but Dolby created a spatial audio system that doesn't just incorporate speakers in front or behind you like surround sound did. Mm-hmm. There's also speakers beside you and speakers on the ceiling. Oh. And beside you can mean anywhere in sort of this almost 360, 270 degree bubble because there's no speakers on the ground. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that makes Atmos a little different is that it's scalable. I think the minimum amount of speakers you can have, this minimum is 11.1, so 11 speakers in a subwoofer. Oh. But that can be up to 100.1 mm-hmm. or 200.1 or 75.1 because the software, the Dolby decoder, is a smart software entity mm-hmm. that knows when it's hooked up to a Dolby system how many speakers are there. So it will play the same thing back in 11.1 or 75.1 without losing any information. It just knows it has more points for a finer gradient of where something is panned, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So when you look at it in the software, the way you're moving stuff, it's to call them objects. So you're moving each track as an object, and you're looking at it in a 3D space, basically like a box that if in the renderer, it looks like a 3D box. So you can literally move things like, it's not just moving it like I'm panning from this speaker to this speaker. It's like it exists between speakers, and that on another system, it would potentially have a speaker there that it could use. But if not, it's just triangulating between the two speakers that it does have to use.
I gotcha.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. And it's kind of controversial because I think a lot of people are getting at first we're sort of getting bullied by Apple into, you have to turn your mix in Apple spatial audio format. Also, if you want any juice on our playlists and things like that. And of course, instead of Apple using Dolby Atmos's algorithm that they invented, they came up with their own.
Of course.
So they did the annoying proprietary thing instead of just adopting the standard that Dolby came out.
And then everybody else has to like shift around that.
Exactly. Well, because Spotify doesn't do it yet.
Right.
Only Tidal, Amazon, which actually use the Dolby algorithm. Okay. And then Apple has spatial audio, but they use the Apple spatial audio algorithm, which sounds extremely different. So when you're mixing in Atmos, you really have to consider, and actually if you listen to a bunch of early Atmos mixes, that I think Apple Music's been doing this for a couple years, but the early ones that went up there did not sound good.
Yeah.
But it's because Apple didn't release a way for anybody to be able to monitor in real time what their encoding was doing to a mix. So for example, I could be mixing something in Dolby Atmos, and I'm listening through the Dolby renderer, and I can hear what it's doing, and I can hear what it's doing in my headphones binaurally, but when it gets sent to Apple, it goes through their algorithm, and then it sounds completely different than what you just sent.
And you don't even know.
And you have no way to monitor that in real time. Now they've incorporated that into Logic, and it's a little easier. And now a third-party company has made it so that they have a piece of software that is the Apple encoder, so you can listen in real time.
Gotcha.
But at first people couldn't, and I don't think they realized how radically different it sounded. Apple's is definitely optimized for their AirPods. So like if you listen to their algorithm, their encoding of spatial audio through regular headphones, if you listen to the same mix, nothing changed, through the Dolby one on regular headphones, and you're like, this sounds great. And then you put it through the Apple thing, the same headphones, things sound completely different, really wacky. But then if you took that same mix through the Apple encoder and listened to your AirPods, it kind of sounds way more right. So it's definitely just like pushing people towards buying their headphones and adapting this whole system.
That's like so classic what they do.
Oh, yeah.
They do that with everything.
Yeah.
The green texts, like they just make you bully people into like buying their products.
Yeah, it's super annoying. So it's something we've had to consider. Jason Kingsland and I have mixed several things in Atmos together, and it's something we've had to consider that I don't know that a lot of people are or were at first, that really, like, if you were going to do it right, you'd almost have to do two different mixes. I mean, not quite. We've kind of figured out some ways to make it work both ways, but it's, unfortunately, just like every other cool format of audio that they've come out, someone comes in and finds a way, or any other cool form of media, someone's come along and found a way to convolute it, you know?
Totally.
We couldn't just have, there's VHS and beta, there was Blu-ray and HD DVD.
I forgot about Blu-ray when that came out first.
Yeah, HD DVD is the one that died.
Oh, yeah.
They lost that battle. That was like the Microsoft-backed one, I think.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah. Now, they still make Blu-rays, right?
I think so.
I haven't bought a movie physically in
it's
so
been
long.
forever. But yeah, I do think they still make Blu-rays.
Yeah, they do that a lot. There's always some competing format, but I mean, unfortunately, it's just kind of be that way until Spotify chimes in, because they've got the biggest market share by a country mile. So until they come along, and hopefully they're not going to just come up with their own thing, which would be the most annoying thing in the world.
Suck.
I've heard from some people peripherally at Dolby that they've been working with Spotify on it for a while. And so it seems like it's going to be the regular Dolby Atmos algorithm.
Okay.
But if that happens, that truly will, I think, make
like force people to.
Well, I think it'll force people to. I think it'll force mixing engineers working in the format to actually do two different mixes.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's less of a concern about it because they're mostly just everyone's hearing it through Apple. But and it's all just the other reason Apple's forcing people in that ecosystem. It's moving towards selling those headsets. You know, the whatever they're calling them, the goggles.
The VR.
Because that all works with spatial audio.
That makes sense, right?
So they're moving people towards like VR concert experiences and things like that.
Oh my God.
So
what a nightmare.
And they want that to all be a proprietary algorithm so that what they're doing now is basically grooming people 3 years ahead of time to getting people into spatial audio Apple spatial audio formatting so that they can offer tons of content in this headset right out of the gate that works in the listening environment of the headset. They haven't said that explicitly, but it's pretty clear what's happening. Yeah.
Oh, that's freaking me out. I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
That makes me so just anxious. The headsets freak me out. I don't want to put one on because I feel like I'll get sucked in and then it's just like that movie, oh my God, I can't remember it. But every apocalyptic, dystopian movie.
You're just going to put it on and wake up 5 years later?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about cooler stuff that's not so depressing to me. You picked Animal Collective's Merriweather Post Pavilion as your album to display, one of my personal favorites. And I remember Elijah Johnson picked it the first time he came on the podcast. So why did you pick this? I know it was mixed at Chase Park, correct?
Yep, that's right. Ben Allen mixed it there with the band.
This is a fantastic album. So what does this album mean to you?
Well, when I was in college, maybe sophomore year, Feels came out, the Animal Collective record Feels. Mm-hmm. And it really changed my life. Like, I was always really into the things going on in Athens when I was in high school and college. Well, really high school, really even middle school, but wasn't old enough to discover it until later in high school and college with the Elephant Six recording company. I love the Olivia Tremor Control and Circulatory System. Those records are all really, really important records to me. Also love Elf Power and Apples in Stereo and music tapes. I mean, I love all of it for different reasons, but particularly Olivia Tremor Control and Circulatory System, the things that Will and Bill were doing the first time I heard that stuff, it just completely blew my mind that somebody had made that, and then learning about how they had made it just seem even more magical and impossible. Mm-hmm. And then when I discovered earlier Animal Collective like Feels, it made me go backwards to like Sung Tongs,
sure,
and April and the Phantom, and these earlier kind of noisier records of theirs. But it just felt like a similar vein of imagination, of just being really out there and creative and free and making this music that didn't really sound like anything else. So that was really inspiring in college. And then to get to coming back one summer, getting I had been at Chase Park before. I started when I was in high school. But I came back this summer of 2007 to do my like official internship for school credit. I went to some context. I went to Indiana University for recording. I was in the Jacob School of Music, the recording arts program. So you had to do an internship for school credit. And when I came back the summer of 2007 to do that, Animal Collective, Merriweather Post Pavilion is the summer of 2008. I'm a year off. So when I came back in 2008, I saw on the schedule that Animal Collective was going to be in the studio, and this band that had already become one of my favorite bands and was super inspiring to me, I just completely freaked out, and I felt like it was some kind of weird cosmic thing.
Right.
Ironically, at the same time, I had just been dating my girlfriend for, I guess it'd be 6-7 months at that point, who's now my wife. We've been together 16 years.
Nice.
I was going to LA to meet her parents for the first time, and I had to miss being the studio assistant on this record.
What?
So my friend Neil got to do it. He was my best friend from school, and he came down to do his internship at Chase Park too. And we lived on a friend's floor all summer. It was insane. But
while you were at Chase Park, you were living on someone's floor?
Yeah, when I came back from college, I basically had no money, obviously. I mean, I worked all through college. I had some money, but I made a little bit of money. I got like a little gift money for graduating from like grandparents and whatever,
sure,
aunts, uncles. Maybe had like, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000, something like that. Very small amount of money I'd saved from working plus this gift money. But it wasn't enough to just start paying rent. So Neil and I lived on my friend's couches on Nakuchi, right over there, for the summer. And basically my goal was just to save up enough money by the end of that summer that I could pay rent in a house that fall, because I didn't ever want to get another job besides recording. So I just refused to do that and just concentrate entirely on that. And sort of, I find counterintuitively, I tell people this advice all the time, that if you're in a position, now some people have more responsibilities than that already at that age, or other reasons why this doesn't work. But if you don't, I always encourage people, you really have very little to lose, and you might as well go for it while you're young and you're not, don't have a lot of other things that you need to take care of. That's the time to just dive in. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Don't let your parents tell you that this isn't going to work. And you know what? It might not. But if you're going to try it, I always encourage people to dive fully in and don't give yourself a safety net or a backup plan, because it really lights a fire under your ass. Yeah. You have to do it. Anyway, we were doing that. Neil got to assist on this record, but I was around some because they were there for 2 or 3 weeks. So I went to LA with Catherine and came back, and they were still doing that. And it was just really amazing. I didn't get to work on it as much. I filled in maybe a day or two, but it was just amazing getting to hang out with them. I mean,
so you were around for the recording
doing other
of
stuff.
it.
Well, the mixing of it, yeah.
The mixing.
I was helping David in Studio A. They were in Studio B.
Right.
But it's like I got to play ping pong with them and
that's sick.
Chat with them.
Who was the best ping pong player?
Noah Panda Bear. He's really good at ping pong.
Huh.
Yeah, at least he was back then. He was very good.
Yeah, that's sick.
And the engineer producer who was mixing that album, Ben Allen, he's also very good at ping pong. He actually has a ping pong tournament at his studio maze every year.
Oh, wow.
And we used to have a ping pong table at Chase Park.
In Atlanta, right? Ben Allen's in Atlanta. Yes, that's right. Maze Studios.
When we used to have a ping pong table at Chase Park, it was highly competitive over there.
I'm sure.
Both David, Henry, and Winston Barbie are all good, although I think Henry might be the best. I think he and David kind of go. But Winston's no slouch either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All the Barbie boys are very good at ping pong.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool. You got to play.
So I picked this out because it was sort of like a pivotal moment of like, I got to meet these people that were sort of my musical heroes at the time. And then it was also sort of my returning to Chase Park it was the summer that I returned from college to sort of make it work. So
kind of like a cosmic album for you, maybe, or very symbolic.
It's a really big turning point in my life. It's the beginning of, this moment in time was the beginning of me trying to make it professionally as a recording engineer and producer. So I'll just remember that summer as a really special time.
So being such a big Animal Collective fan, where does this fit in the ranking for you among their albums?
Well, it's probably in the top 5, but it's probably number 5.
Wow. That's kind of a hot take.
Yeah, I like Sung Tong's Feels and Strawberry Jam more than I like Merriweather, for sure.
Yeah.
I also like Spirit They've Gone, Spirit They've Vanished probably more than that, which is like a really early Animal Collective.
First album, or the one with like the drawings of like the weird people?
Yeah, and it usually gets co-released with April and the Phantom, which is another early record or EP. And that's like really freaky, spooky, weird, noisy stuff. And I love that record. Whoa. I love weird, aggressive, noisy Animal Collective.
Yeah.
And I like the mellow stuff too. I mean, I love the EP with Vashti Bunyan. Merriweather's good. I mean, obviously it's great, but I'm kind of a earlier Animal Collective head, pre-Merriweather.
Song Tongs is awesome, and I love Strawberry Jam for sure. But other than those, I know a little bit from Feels, but not too much other than that.
And there's some amazing EPs. Oh, don't sleep on Animal Collective EPs in between a lot of records that are just like the People EP. I think that's associated with Feels.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's the one that came out after Centipede Hurts? Something about water, brain farting.
Oh, the EP.
Yeah. That EP is incredible. So there's so many Animal Collective gems that are on non-album releases that you really gotta make sure to check that stuff out too.
There was an EP with like what do you want, Sky? That song.
Yeah. What was that?
I can't remember the name
That's
of
a great EP also.
Yeah, I really liked that one. My friend showed that to me.
Yeah, I think they're just so prolific and so amazing. I mean, I even think there's some amazing songs on Centipede Hurts. I know some people don't like that album as much.
There are a couple that are pretty good. You're right.
And I really like the new record a lot also.
I was going to ask how you felt about the new ones.
Yeah, I think the one after Centipede Hurts I didn't like that much. I think I saw you have that one in there too.
Centipede Hurts?
No, the one after.
Painting With.
I
liked it at the time.
That's probably my least favorite Animal Collective record.
Yeah.
But there's been two since then, and both of them are really good.
Fall Be Kind was the EP.
Amazing EP.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you liked the newer two albums, like the one from a year ago?
I like the one from a year ago a lot. I feel like it was kind of a return to form of this era and earlier a little bit. And the new one I think is really cool. I just
really
can't
get behind like the 20-minute songs.
Oh, yeah.
That's hard for me to like just throw on. But, the sounds I've heard from it are pretty cool.
I can zone out to that kind of stuff pretty good. So, or just, I don't know. I don't get a lot of downtime to just intently listen, to sit and listen to something for fun. So
yeah, I would imagine. If you do,
a lot of car listening right now.
Right. If you do have downtime to listen to music that you want to listen to, what's typically going to be on the rotation?
Bebop jazz from like 1958 to 1970.
Okay. So very different than what you
Extremely
record.
Different. Yeah.
I got you.
And that's for obvious reasons, probably.
Right.
I'm endlessly fascinated by those people and their mastering of their instruments. It's incredible to me, and the free nature of it. Often, I love free jazz. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be some jazz scholar, and like there's so many people who know so much more than me and can go so much deeper on this stuff, but John Coltrane's Ascension is a big record for me. I love Ascension. Ornette Coleman's really important to me, like A Shape of Jazz to Come and Free Jazz and Live at the Golden Circle, all incredible albums. Don Cherry's album, John Cherry as an artist is amazing to me. And yeah, so a lot of that, but also a lot of like Lee Morgan. I love Lee Morgan and his tone on trumpet. It's beautiful. And so it's like a lot of that. And then newer jazz, I love Kamasi Washington.
Yeah.
And I love what him and Robert Glasper and Terrence Martin are doing with what's it called? It's Crenshaw. I feel bad. I'm brain farting on the name of their label and their whole collective in LA, but they're making like amazing jazz R&B music that I listen to a lot. Some of it instrumental, some of it with vocals. I find that stuff extremely inspiring. I go through phases with albums that I fall in love with, like when I do get to listen to something new, and I'll just listen to it a ton of times. I'm obsessed with D'Angelo. I still listen to that all the time.
Zach
I think that's probably
loves D'Angelo.
Everybody does that probably, hopefully.
I remember like senior year, or when I was a senior in high school, Black Messiah came out, and I didn't know who he was at all. And my friend showed me that album, and I was like, this sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it was somebody who'd been around for 20-something years at that time.
He's pretty magical. Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, How Does It Feel was a huge single. And I don't know if you've ever seen that music video.
Is that the one where he's like naked?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
So that was
That's
like
crazy.
on MTV and BET all the time. And
Uh-huh.
it's like almost, it's right
Yeah, they cut it
there.
real
There
close.
you couldn't get any closer. And that video is insane.
It's a pretty like incredible music video to have execute it the way they did.
Yeah, to have the confidence to do that that's pretty wild.
Right.
And know that if this song becomes a hit, that's gonna be on TV a lot.
Mm-hmm. So
but
funny.
More power to him. He looks awesome.
I know, for real.
He is ripped in that video. It's crazy.
But yeah, I wanted to bring up just a couple of credits here in case the people listening don't know that you've worked with Toro et Moi, Faye Webster, Futurebirds, Spelling, Kishi Bashi, SG Goodman, Night Palace, Of Montreal, Mothers, Drive-By Truckers, Widespread Panic, and my personal favorite is Deerhunter. And when I had David Barbie on, I asked him about Deerhunter because that Halcyon Digest album is, no joke, probably the album I've listened to more than any album in my entire life. And you were an assistant engineer on it, correct?
Yeah. I had a very small role in that album. That was mostly David and Ben. And then, I'm sure David told you, because he loves to tell the story, that Henry recorded basement scene the basement of their house.
That blew my mind.
So Henry and Winston have engineering credits on that, I think. I just helped out sitting in when David couldn't do stuff and did guitar overdubs and just helped get them stuff they needed. And I got to just be kind of a fly on the wall for a lot of that process. David and I also recorded some stuff that's on Weird Era, the accompanying disc to Microcastles. Yeah. And I actually played piano and guitar on some songs on that.
Oh, whoa.
Because Bradford just wanted sort of like this, not cacophony, but everyone playing at the same time for some stuff. So that's when we first met them. And David engineered and produced 5 or 6 songs, and I was just an assistant again. But I got to do that and had a friendship with them. So when we did Halcyon Digest, there's already kind of a rapport, and I'm sure David's probably told you every story about that session, or maybe not, but
I can hear them all a million times because I love that album.
Well, I'll tell you one anecdote that's kind of funny is that, Bradford's kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. And, he can be...
Mercurial is the word David used.
Yeah, mercurial. But he always loved me and was really nice to me.
Okay, cool.
All of them were. And Moses and I were kept in touch for a long time after that too, because I worked on a couple of his Moon Diagram solo albums. I mixed them for him.
Okay.
I love Moses. He's an amazing artist too.
And he plays what?
Drums. Moses is the drummer, yeah. And then Lockett obviously has Lotus Plaza, his solo stuff, the other guitar player. Those records are amazing too. But just a weird aside is one day I was in there helping them with stuff on and off, and Bradford came with this camera and said they needed to do these press photos, whatever. I ended up taking all these press photos of them in the back lounge of Studio B of Chase Park. And like, if you pull up Spotify, the Deerhunter banner at the top is a picture I took.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. And there's some photos in the liner notes of Halcyon Digest, these black and white photos of the band with instruments. I took all those.
What? Yeah. So you have photography credits on it?
Yeah, randomly. I am not a photographer. Well, they used one of my photos.
Is that the one?
No, the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. It's like the banner.
Yeah, it's the banner on Spotify.
Dude, for whatever reason, it won't let me download the app, so I can't look at it on my computer.
Well, you can check it out some other time, but...
I will. But you said it's in the CD liner notes?
Yeah, like if you fold it out and you find these black and white pictures of the band and they're like holding instruments, if you look, that's the back garage door of Chase Park that we're standing in front of. It's like our little back lounge, and I took those. And one of the photos they used as like the big press photo to promote the album coming out. I just always thought that was hilarious.
That is funny.
That I had these photo credits for
so many like professional
record.
photographers cursing you.
And it's literally just Bradford handing me this camera and telling me to do this thing while they posed, and I had no clue what I was doing.
That's so funny.
But I think the spontaneity of that and not being able to overthink it probably helped.
Yeah,
I just had to take them and then move on.
Maybe that was intentional on his part.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
So of all those artists who, I mentioned that you'd work with, are there, and obviously there's more, but do you have any projects that really stick out to you as like top 3 favorite projects you got to be a part of?
Oh man, top 3 would be so hard to say.
Mm-hmm. Maybe not even having to rank them or anything.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's like I just feel lucky, and I say this all the time, and people think I'm being self-detrimental or something, but I just feel lucky that I get to be around people and work on music with people that are way more talented than me frequently. And I'm serious when I say that. Like, they all have, it's hard to know where to start. I mean, you brought up spelling a second ago. Tia is like just a force of, I don't even know. Mm-hmm. She's like a magical being to me. She's just such a great producer, arranger, singer, and she just has this vision for her art. And she came from a visual art world first. She didn't really like making music that she's releasing as like not part of art or as like an album format thing. It's not even that. It's a fairly new thing for her. I mean, she's made a few records at this point, but in the course of her life, it's something that she kind of started to do later and then realized that she was really good at. And I don't know, I hold her in extremely high regard, and getting to mix albums with her I just feel lucky, honestly. But I feel the same way about SG and Faye also. I mean, they're both magical and special in their own way. Recording SG, there's a song on her album where she's a cappella for it's kind of 2 songs mashed together, but watching SG sing is just sort of this, I'm just blown away by it, honestly. And she has a really keen ear for arrangement and production as well. And when she was singing that a cappella song, I've said this before in some other interviews, but there was a point where she was doing it where I felt like me just being around was like, I don't know, like just a scientist looking at a butterfly is going to alter the course of what the butterfly is going to do.
Sure,
so I just kind of walked out of the room at a certain point and just let her do her thing. And I knew she'd kind of, if she looked up and saw that I wasn't there, that she'd probably like get it.
Right.
And so she did it. And one of those is the one we used. And it's just really beautiful.
Whoa.
And then, Faye is really special as well. She also, honestly, has a keen ear for arrangement. But she works completely differently in that she has ideas, and sometimes some of them are very fully formed, some of them less so, but she's so much into the spontaneity of the moment. Like, she likes to bring stuff and show it to the band in the studio in the moment. And so there's not like a lot of overthinking or pre-planning or things like that have happened beforehand. It's like, get these people who are super talented together in a room and show them your music and your ideas and see what comes quickly to them.
Just like initial thoughts.
And then work from there. And sometimes it's amazing and magical. And like her last single that came out, Lifetime.
So good.
Except for the strings and the horns and Faye's vocals. All of it's live. Like the piano, the drums, the bass, the classical guitar. We might have had to punch in a couple of those licks. Faye's guitar. It's like we'd had a really long day in the studio, been kind of intense working on these 2 songs that weren't really coming together. And we were kind of took a dinner break, and we came back, and they went out in the room, and Faye showed them the song, and it was like 30, 45 minutes later, it was that.
Wow.
And it's just like the piano's just right there with the drums, maybe 6 feet away or something like that. And they made
all in the same room. Cool.
They just made this beautiful. I mean, the classical guitar is isolated, and Faye's guitar amp and the bass amp are isolated, but they're all just sitting there together. The piano and the drums are right next to each other, though.
That's funny.
But then there's moments like that where it's just pure you're just literally watching magic happen. And then sometimes it's more like, okay, well, we got a vibe, and this is like kind of cool. We've got the drums figured out. Now let's focus in on this or whatever.
Right.
So she's really good at trusting her instinct and then knowing like, I'm not feeling that, or I don't know. Yeah. Faisal, and she's always had that since I've known her. I mean,
And you've worked with her for how many years at this point? Like 6 years?
I mixed her self-titled album. That was 2017?
2017.
Or maybe we did in 2016. I can't remember. But yeah, I mixed that record. Then I've recorded and mostly produced the next 3 plus the orchestral EP.
Mm-hmm.
And
which 26 people in a room.
That was one of the coolest things I've ever done.
What was that like? How do you navigate having to dial everybody in?
Well, we had a really great team at Space Bomb. I should shout out that studio. There, Trey Pollard, who wrote and arranged the music, the orchestral music, and conducted, was amazing. And Curtis, I can't remember Curtis's last name, but he was the house engineer. He was super, super helpful also. And they both know that room so well and how their typical setup sounds that we started with that. And then I kind of added a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have, to backtrack, in college at Indiana University, which shout out to IU Jacob School of Music. That place was amazing. I'm actually teaching a class over Zoom later today.
Oh, cool.
For them, yeah. But one of your classes when you're in the program is recording 80 hours of live classical and jazz music every semester.
Mm. Oh, I think I remember you talking about this. So
you get a lot of reps in. I know a lot about recording classical music, actually.
Right.
So going into that environment, I wasn't really intimidated at all. I mean, I've recorded on the Musical Arts Center stage at Indiana, is the second largest stage in North America behind the Met. And I worked on lighting and electrics crew there. I worked on the audio crew. So like
that university stage is the second biggest in the country.
In all of North America.
In all of North America.
behind the Met.
Who would have thought? I would have never guessed that.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the best music schools in the country. Like,
right.
It competes with Juilliard and a bunch of other places. The kids that was the other thing when I first arrived there. I've said this a million times, but the kids, the musician people that were there, just, I'm from Watkinsville, and there's talented people that come from Watkinsville, but I had never seen, this is like kids, the best of the best from the entire world.
Right.
So crazy
that
talented.
Is insane.
And I lived in the music dorm the first year, so I'd be like idiot hungover and going to get snacks from the vending machine, and there's kids that have just been down in those practice rooms for 5 hours. I'm down there at 2 a.m. You can hear somebody practicing.
Unreal.
Yeah, freaky good and just so committed. But Faye's thing, so I felt fairly comfortable, especially because I had 2 people I was working with that just knew the room so well and were very talented also. It allowed me to just concentrate really on making sure that we got the takes we needed and looking over and thinking what edits, because it's mostly live, but we did a couple takes, so there's some little pieces that are spliced in. But and then Faye sang live with them, which we went back and fixed some stuff here and there, but a couple of the songs on the EP, I can't remember which ones, are like 100% live. So she was doing an incredible job too. And
I'm sure.
having to keep her eye on the conductor and singing in this her songs that she sang a million times the other way,
right? In
this new way. And then she wrote Car Therapy as a brand new song to just be on the orchestral EP. So there's an original on there as well. But it was
I didn't realize that was only on that album.
That's the only version
EP.
that exists. Yeah. She wrote it to be for that.
Right.
But we went up the day before, got everything kind of set up, mic'd up, dialed in, and I don't know, man. It was just a magical day, honestly. It was so much fun. Very special, unique experience.
So when you've worked with her for a while, do you feel like there's something about the projects you've worked on with her that you've learned and taken with you into future projects?
Oh, I feel like all projects do that to each other, affect each other. I mean, you have to keep your, it's hard sometimes when you do this a lot to keep your antenna open and be trying to learn something every time you do it, but it's so important to do that. And sometimes working in the same room day in, day out with people, it's easy for you to get in a rut and just say, I'm putting up the same mics that sounded great last time. And you might want to start with something similar to that, but I always try to at least try one new microphone on one new thing that I've never done before every session. That's the minimum of a new thing I'm going to try at Chase Park.
One new microphone on one new thing.
On one new source. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I've never done before. Just that's the minimum new thing I'm going to do to at least try something out and discover something new.
Yeah. You can always go back to what definitely works if that doesn't.
But I think every session affects each other, and you're hopefully accumulating information. I mean, I think specifically from Faye and that group of musicians, I just learned, I don't even know if it's learned or just enforces my idea of really being in the moment and focusing on what's happening and not overthinking it and being ready to capture like the magic right when it is happening, and just being prepared for that at all times, because you don't know when that's going to happen. And like I said, with them, sometimes it's a little longer, but sometimes it's really fast.
Yeah.
So you just have to...
You never know.
And trusting that if you did just get it really fast, you can just stop.
Right.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Don't do 5 more takes. There's no point.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to be that guy, to be honest. Like I'll get the take I know is a take, but I'm always the guy that's like, what's even further down this path? Like, try it a few more times and see if we can get it better. But I've tried to get better at learning to embrace, like, no, that just gave you goosebumps. Like, sure, you could do another great one, but just stop. Like, this is magical. And really listening to that group with their musical feedback. The rest of the band is just so talented that a lot of times people are, just contributing a lot to, I don't know, nothing really sounds like that unit of people all together. It's just really special.
I was going back and listening to a lot of her songs, knowing that we were going to be talking about them, and but not Kiss, that song. I listened to it this morning, and there's something about the mix of it that just like grabs me immediately when those pianos come in on the yeah, and it's so like, it feels like it's right there. When you were mixing in that, did you already know like this was going to feel like it was almost overwhelming in a good way?
Yeah.
Which is another song of hers.
Yeah. I think Faye, I can't remember the order in the studio. I know that we decided to put the drums in this tiny room so we could make them like kind of small and crunchy and punchy instead of, we were at Sonic Ranch at Big Blue, which is a huge studio. It's a massive room.
Where is that?
In El Paso, Texas, or outside of it in Tornillo, about 40 miles outside of El Paso. Beautiful studio, a magical place. But we decided for that song and maybe one other, we had an alternate drum kit set up in a much smaller isolation booth. So we put Charles in there for that song. And I think, I want to say that it was, I cannot remember whose idea it was, probably Faye's, to have the alternating, like just Faye by herself band coming in. So then when I knew that's the dynamic we were going to be working in, I just was like, put piano on it, put strings on it, put horns on it. I want it to be like, my friend McKendrick Bearden compared it to like when on old synths or drum machines, there'd be like a trigger button that's just the orchestra button that's just like bam, bam.
Right.
You'd hear it sometimes sampled in old hip hop beats, but it's kind of like that. It's just like this explosion of
it just hits
like
so
10
hard.
sounds at the same time that aren't happening any other time.
And then the third verse kicks in and you barely hear the guitar at all. Like I thought the song was done for a second, and I checked my phone. I was like, oh no, it's just so quiet. You just go, right.
We really wanted to experiment. We really wanted it to be the first time that somebody listens to that song, the very first time the chorus comes in, or
but not Kiss.
We wanted the first time that it hits somebody for them to just be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Did not see that coming at all. And it's been crazy seeing videos of her playing live on this tour now, and just seeing people, obviously, it's kind of unintentionally just made for live shows because people go nuts when it hits.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now I need to go watch
really
some videos.
Quiet and they got like a spotlight on her.
Yeah.
They're doing it in a really cool way. And then
almost reminds me of like that 90s, like
people
Pixies, PJ Harvey, like loud, quiet thing.
Yeah. PJ Harvey's the queen of that.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah, people have been going nuts with that song, which has been really cool to see. It's just like you never know, I don't know, what's going to land and what's not going to land. And you can't really think about that if you let that enter your mind while you're making something, then you're totally screwed. You just have to make it based on the fact that you love it and the people you're working with love it, and trust that instinct to just ride that out.
Totally.
If you start trying to cater things for people's individual tastes, you're toast.
Do you have a favorite part of the creative process, or like the recording process?
I mean, I always joke. I just said this yesterday to somebody I was talking to. It's sort of a joke and sort of not. But like, the reason I do what I do is because I didn't have the patience or the drive to play an instrument by myself. Like, I'm never going to get good enough because I hate practicing alone.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have that passion that probably someone like you or Tommy or whatever. You pick up a guitar and you can just lose yourself for a couple hours and it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me. So I never got great. I mean, I can read music. I used to be able to play the piano. I can play bass and drums and kind of badly, but that wasn't fun to me. The fun part was band practice and getting to be around people. I love talking to people. I love hanging out with people. I'm very extroverted. So that's like when I found out that this was a job where you're like, and I am very technically minded. I love tinkering with stuff. I get that from my dad, I think, who's always been a computer hobbyist and just very into the technical aspect of things. When I found there was a job that was like a kind of combination of all those things, because I was obsessed with music as a kid, even though I wasn't from a very musical family. Like, they couldn't play. My parents listened to tons and tons of music. So it was always on in the house, always around, always on in the car. I think my favorite part is just being around the other people and getting to talk about like what we're going to do and like getting to know them and digging out what they're trying to do, what emotion they want to express, really getting to the center of who they are, what they want to say, what we're trying to express. I love that. And then I do love mixing. Like, especially if I get tracks that already sound good, mixing is really, really fun to me. Especially nowadays, mixing in some sort of blends with kind of almost a form of production where a lot of things can be changed. Sometimes I'm doing radical things. Sometimes people tell me to go crazy where it's like I am producing via mixing. I mean, they'll give me just a blank slate and say,
do whatever you want.
Chop out this if you want. Do whatever you want. You know, so I'll end up like getting rid of a bridge or doing this here or changing an ending or I mean, not everyone's like that, but it depends.
Right.
Some people have been recording and mixing at home themselves, and then they've hit a wall, and they're like, "This just sounds like a series of sounds over time, and I can't even hear music anymore. So can you please help me
switch it up?" Yeah.
So I do enjoy that part of it, but I really do enjoy the people part of it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense, and especially when you get to be a part of someone's world, essentially. Like, they bring to you the things that are so vulnerable and mean a lot to them, and then you get to add to it and help bring their vision to life.
And I think over time, I think I've always been a very empathetic person, but I also used to be and still can be very sarcastic and dry. But I really think working on music over time has just made me more empathetic, and getting to know so many different people and what they're going through. And, you know, sometimes in the studio, things get really, really vulnerable and real. And just like being there for somebody when that's happening, or figuring out how do we make this thing feel like how you're feeling. I don't know. That's just taught me a lot about people and communication. And I try to translate that to just my life more now. So yeah, I think that's something that Catherine and I several years ago went on a trip where we drove from here to Montreal, and it's like the people we were visiting in Montreal were close friends because I had worked on a bunch of Fred's music, and we stayed with 3 people between going up there and back. They were all people that I had made records with and become close friends with. And then I think about it now, I still have friends from before I was doing this for a long time, for sure. And some friends I've met other ways. But like, so many of my friends are people that I met from working with initially and were
Right.
Super close still. That's how I met McKendrick.
Yeah.
And he's like one of my best friends.
He did an episode of the podcast, and his album, I think, is one of my favorites to come out of Athens in a long time.
Yeah, he's just so kind of a brilliant musician.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he was working with Ben and Ryan, and they're both great engineer, producers, and musicians themselves, you know. Sometimes I actually feel like I'm the least talented person because I can't pick up 7 instruments and play them. I tell that.
I mean, that's such an unfair comparison.
When I was hanging out with Tommy last time, that's one of the things I said to him. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you can just make a song in like 5 hours.
Yeah, we were
That's not
working
really
on
my vibe.
the tune the other day, and I was like, it'd be kind of cool to have maybe some banjo on it. And he's like, oh, yeah, for sure. He grabs his banjo and starts playing. I'm like, I didn't even know you played banjo. He's like, I don't really. I'm like, yeah, but what you just played sounded awesome.
Yeah, people like him, and I think you've talked to Matt Martin before. But there's tons of examples of people that are kind of more y'all's age. Well, there's people my age and older too that are that way. But I just think there was this little wave of people just slightly younger than me that grew up with GarageBand being on their computers, and Ableton Lite being pretty cheap, and then learning instruments and just being able to go nuts really young. And
and YouTube to like learn stuff from. It's impressive.
Yeah. And I'm right before that wave, and I also don't even know if I still would have been one of those people because, like I said before, I don't really. It's not. I'm like a dinosaur. I'm like a relic of this other thing. I don't even know, but to me, when I'm producing, I don't want to be the one making the music. It's really about and I'm not saying that's wrong to do. Obviously, there's so many great songs made by these people we're talking about. But I love trying to draw it out of you, the artist. It's more, maybe no one else will ever know or care, or it doesn't matter. But if it's an expression coming directly from you as much as possible, or the group of people you're making music with, that sounds different to me and feels different to me.
Sure.
Again, I don't know if it matters at all, but to me, it's like, that's what's interesting is what's coming out of you. I want to spend the energy and time. Sure, I could get somebody else in here and do this and whatever, and that'd be faster, but it's like, that's not going to sound like you.
Right.
And I think that's really important. I think there's so much music that sounds sort of, I call it generic good, just generically good, sounds good, that doesn't really have a lot of feeling or meaning behind it. And I think also a lot of people, because production is so much more accessible and it's easy to do, a lot of people spend a lot of time concentrating on that rather than the feeling or even the songwriting of something, you know? So I feel like there's a lot of stuff that feels like it could all be on in an Urban Outfitter, but you never know the difference between the songs. And you're like kind of bobbing your head and tapping your foot. And you're like, yeah, this feels good. I'm having a good time. But it has, and there's a place for that kind of music, but it just lacks substance of any kind.
Totally.
So I don't know. Maybe my way of doing things is an extreme reaction to that or something, but
well, you're doing something right, I would say. You've already given so much of your time. I really appreciate you being here. I got one more question and then the last 5, which are just these kind of 5 quick questions.
Okay.
But I just wanted to know, in your opinion, do you have like a top 3, top 5 best recorded sounding albums list? Just in general that you think are like
funny.
The best sounding.
I think I'm weird as hell because I don't even think about that stuff when I'm listening to music.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't, and maybe that's intentional because I have to do this as a job.
Yeah.
But I never had that thing. Well, actually, let me think about this for a second. I don't think about that as much anymore, but let me think about when I was younger. Like, what did I hear that was... Okay, yeah. Speaking in Tongues and Remain in Light, the Talking Heads records.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the way those were recorded when I was younger. Loved them. Still do. That music is timeless to me. I mean, going back to Olivia Tremor Control and Circulatory System, those records and the fact they're making them on 4 tracks and 8 tracks, I mean, the way everything sounds and feels like this other magical universe, that to me is incredible for a completely different reason. I love the way those sound a lot. I definitely had a Beatles phase. Everyone has that.
Of course.
But I'm trying to think if I was obsessed with the way that it was recorded more than just the music.
Right.
I mean, my favorite Beatles album is Revolver.
Me too.
Yeah, it's just, I saw you have like 5 versions of it in there.
I know, dude. My dad got me one. I think I bought myself one. My friend bought me one. It's like, it just keeps growing.
Well, they keep remixing it and whatever.
Exactly.
Tinkering with it.
Yeah.
But I do love the way that record sounds. I'm trying to think of what else just blew me away with the way it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
All I can think of is I love the way Sticky Fingers sounds.
Okay.
By the Rolling Stones. I think that record sounds amazing. But it's like, I don't really, to me, it's how does it feel more, if that makes any sense. I mean, I am a recording nerd to a certain extent, but I'm not as much like, I'm not sitting around debating, I don't know, like the snare sound on 3 different things, or the fidelity. It just doesn't feel really that relevant to me. Because when I think about the records that I would tell you, it's like, it's the way they sound is part of it, but it's really how do they feel. I love Talk Talk. That's another band that I love the way their records sound. Laughing Stock and Spirit of Eden, those 2 albums are unbelievable.
Is one of those the one with like the big tree?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I've heard on like Rate Your Music, that's like one of the biggest albums, and I've never really given it a listen.
Those 2 records are unbelievable.
Okay.
Yeah, honestly.
I'll check them out.
Mind-blowing stuff. So I guess, those things, I do love the way they sound, but I guess I just never thought about it that way, more than just like, I love the way that this feels, and the sound is part of that. It's conveying this thing correct, like in a way that's impactful.
Gotcha.
I guess that kind of runs the gamut from really weird and kind of lo-fi to really shiny.
Yeah, you got a lot of good answers in that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can leave it there. But let's take it over to the last 5. So I have you pick a few little pieces of paper from this bowl here. Some might not quite apply just because usually, I have bands in here. But if that is the case, we can just skip on to the next one.
Okay, let's see what this
so
first
question
one
number
says.
1.
Question number 1. Song you wish you wrote. Wow.
So maybe if you can't think of like a one you'd rather write, maybe it's more of a song you wish you recorded.
Oh, well, you know what? Actually, I did just think of a record that I love the sound of, truly.
Mm-hmm.
And I love London Calling by The Clash.
Okay.
And
the whole album or the song specifically?
I love the whole album.
Yeah.
But I'll pick that as a song that I wish I recorded.
There you go.
That record is unbelievable to me.
I don't think I've listened to the whole thing.
It's, yeah. I do wish I recorded that song.
That's a great answer.
Underrated artist at the moment. So hard to know who's rated highly, because sometimes I talk to people and they've never heard of something that I assumed was big, and then other times they talk to me about an artist that I think is up and coming, and then I look on Spotify and they have 5 million monthly streams. So I'm like, what? But you know what? I'll pick SG Goodman.
Sure.
I think SG is highly. She's getting bigger and bigger, but she's a real deal.
Yeah.
I'd say SG and if I can have a slash.
Sure.
Spelling. They're both incredible
Spelling,
artists. Yeah. But there's a million more I could say from around here. Night Palace is underrated. Love Avery so much. Anyway, yeah. I think those things are getting appreciation, gaining momentum, but I'd say underrated.
Yeah. I didn't know who SG Goodman was until I saw her on her like co-headlining tour with MJ Linderman.
Oh yeah.
And that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was such a cool concert.
He's unbelievable too.
Yeah, he's awesome. Question number 3.
Best worst decade of music. Ooh.
Let's go.
90s worst.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah. Well, could it be the last half of the 90s and the first half of the 2000s?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good answer.
I'll say 95 to 2005.
Cool. Nice. I love when people get specific with it.
Yeah. Best decade. That's tough. I'll pick. I'll say. Shoosh is tough.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You can still get specific with this as well.
Right. I'm trying to dial that in. I'm trying to think about where I would say. Let's say 72 to 82.
Oh, that's 5 years, right? No, it's not.
72 to 82. Yeah.
Interesting.
You got punk music in there. You've got disco.
I would
you
have
got
thought
some
you
really
would have
great
gone
R&B
with like
records.
67 to 77 or something.
No, because I love disco and R&B, and there's some amazing 70s R&B. Plus, 72 to 82 is probably arguably a lot of peak Bowie. And I love David Bowie. Well, actually, there's a huge answer that I didn't even think of. I love the way David Bowie records sound. Right. A lot of them.
Yeah.
But
do you have a favorite?
No.
There's an 80s album of his that is considered incredible that I keep trying to get into, and I can't.
You're talking about Let's Dance?
No, it's the orange album cover. It's like...
Oh, to him just standing on it?
Yeah, I think.
Is that... Well, that's part of the Berlin trilogy. What is that album cover?
It's like very orange.
Yeah, that stuff he did with Eno in Berlin. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember. Anyway.
See if I can pull it up.
I would pick that decade.
Okay. Yeah.
Hyper specific.
No, that's awesome.
Dream artist producer to work with.
There you go.
Do they have to be alive?
We can do one alive and one dead.
Oh God, that's so hard.
Also, the album was low.
Low, right?
That's what I was thinking of.
I have a really gnarly thing where I cannot remember album and song titles, even though I do this all the time.
That's okay.
Especially like classic albums. I'm like, I've listened to that album 500 times. I'm like, what is that?
On the spot, though, it can be kind of tough.
Dead, I'll pick Bowie.
Cool. Yeah.
I didn't realize how profound of an impact he had on me until he died. And then I was in the studio with my friend Fred Thomas, and we were both just really messed me up. I mean, I can't speak for Fred, but man, he is just unbelievable. And to do so many incredible things over such a long period of time is insane.
Yeah.
It's completely insane.
It wasn't until he died that I really started getting into him, because I must have been 19 maybe, so I didn't know him too well. Like, I knew a couple songs, but after he died I kind of realized like, oh, like he really has done so much, and I'm still learning about so much that he's done in the past. Like, there's a lot for me to listen to.
I think that Bowie has at least 10 albums that you would consider classic all-time albums.
Yeah.
10 of them.
Which is insane.
That's completely insane.
Did you like the last album he put out?
I thought the last two were
Black
great.
Star.
Yeah. And artists alive that I would love to work with, there's way too many. But since you said artist/producer, that made me think of one person specifically. I think it'd be so cool to work with Trent Reznor.
Whoa. Yeah, totally.
He's so talented and just like unbelievable how he's transitioned into film scoring. And when I was younger, I loved Downward Spiral, and there's a couple of those early Nine Inch Nails records that are really incredible. I mean, I'm not listening to them all the time now because it's a little aggressive sometimes.
Right.
But the sound of them and what he was doing, especially at the time that he was doing it, is crazy. Nothing else sounds like those records at that time. So I think it'd be really fun to work with him and get to see his process, him and Atticus Ross, and just see how it's working.
Yeah.
I think that'd be amazing.
The Social Network score is fantastic.
Yeah, I just watched The Killer, which is the new David Fincher movie.
Is it good?
Yeah, their score's really minimal in it. It's pretty understated, but when it comes in, it's really impactful. I thought the movie was... I actually feel like it's one of those movies I want to watch again.
Okay.
It's good, but I don't know. I love David Fincher. I just think he's probably got a few movies that are... If I had to rate it against his own work, I think there's some better David Fincher movies, but it's not bad. I think it's very meditative, and it's really interesting.
Hmm.
It just didn't really grab me as much as I thought.
Yeah,
that
maybe
would.
it is more than one watch
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I think I have one more.
Yep, last one.
3 desert island albums. Ooh.
This is a tough one.
Yeah, I'll take Circulatory System's first record,
Okay.
which is just called Circulatory System. I'd take London Calling, and then I'll take wow. I'm trying to think if I could pick one. Maybe I'll take Let's Dance by Bowie. So I have something a little more upbeat because I'm stuck on a desert island.
Exactly.
And I want to dance with like a coconut or a crab or something like that.
Good thought process.
So I don't lose my mind. I'll take that.
Yeah. You got to have the good vibes on the island.
Yeah.
To keep saying.
Yeah.
Drew Vandenberg, thank you for coming on the podcast, man. It was awesome to get to chat with you about all of your work with some incredible artists and, about your process and everything. And yeah, it's been a blast. I really appreciate you giving an hour and 15 minutes of your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Parker. I appreciate it.
Of course. I'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.
Thank you again for tuning into the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Remember, not only can you listen to the episodes on Apple Podcast and Spotify, but you can also watch the episodes on my YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time.